Hello and welcome to Ask Cuyahoga. This is your opportunity to get some answers to your questions about your property tax bills. I'm Dawn Calavini. I'm with the Communications Department here with Cuyahoga County, and joining me today is Cuyahoga County Treasurer Brad Cromes and the Administrator of our Board of Revision, Ron O'Leary. They're here to answer your questions, also talk about what's the latest in the timeline of your property tax bills and ways to contest your valuations. If you're a property owner, I'm sure you're aware that we went through a sexennial property reappraisal process in the past year, and by now you've been notified of your new valuations. Anyone who filed an informal review with our appraisal department has received notification of that new valuation. And so now, with that new appraisal process and with the valuation, you'll be receiving your property tax bills within the next couple of weeks. And that amount is likely going to be different from the amount that you've had in previous years. So we want to talk about that and what next steps are for you. I thank you both for joining me today.
Thanks for the opportunity.
If you have questions about this process, we're live right now on our social media platforms. You can just submit a comment, post, or you can email us directly at communications@cuyahogacounty.gov. So, Brad, you're our treasurer and you're next up. Everything's being handed off to you because these property tax bills are going to be coming out within the next, really the next couple of days through the holidays. We've got this period of time. So when people receive their property tax bill, I know you're very big on people being financially literate and knowing what they're doing, not just looking at the bottom line and maybe getting overwhelmed by that, but really looking at the bill because there's a lot of information on there.
Yeah, there is, and just a couple of top line things to mention at the outset. We're still waiting on tax rates from the state of Ohio, so as soon as we get those, that'll start the process for us to do bill production. It's our hope that we'll be able to do that the week of Christmas, but always contingent upon other actors in the process. So if folks want to pay by the end of the year for income tax purposes, they'll have the opportunity to do that primarily online. We're going to have all of those posted, and we're doing electronic bill presentment, which is relatively new. So folks can actually see an electronic version of their physical tax bill rather than just the amount that's due.
Oh, that's great.
So that's really valuable. Taxes are going to be due February 20th. Which is later than prior years, but similar to when we shifted the bill cycle to last year to give taxpayers more time to pay their bill, digest what they're going to be finding from us. So another thing to keep in mind there as folks kind of do their end of year financial planning. And what's great about the bill presentment piece is that they'll be able to see the front of their tax bill. And to your point, it's not just that final amount that's due that's contained there. There's a lot of great information about how we arrive at that tax figure. Part of the tax bill presentment is showing you things like what your value is, what your assessed value is, which is less than the appraised value. It'll show things like reduction factors. And if you are already receiving tax reductions like the owner occupancy reduction or the homestead reduction, those are really great things for people to check for because and pretty much everybody who owns their house is going to be eligible for the owner occupancy reduction, but they may or may not have gotten that. That typically takes place during the transaction of purchasing a home, but sometimes doesn't. So a great thing to look for and check on. So all of that calculation information is available on the bill, which is really great. And one of the things that I think is relevant for this year in particular, because we're in this revaluation, reappraisal period, is looking at the county's tax estimator, which I think is still live. That folks can go out there and kind of see what their taxes were last year. They can plug in the amount that they received over the summer and then see what their estimate will be for the coming year. It's important to note that that is an estimate.
Correct.
And it doesn't reflect things like special assessments that may have been charged by political subdivisions or any new levies that might have passed in the election in November. So that'll at least give folks a ballpark, though, to think about. And I think that that's useful. And another thing that I think I'd like to have Ron talk a little bit about is kind of what those reduction factors are. I mentioned that. So when we do property revaluation, there's a number of state laws, House Bill 920 being the big one, that impact that calculation so that increases are kind of held in check a little bit versus what they might otherwise be market value wise. And I don't know, Ron, if you want to get into that, but I think that'd be valuable for folks to know.
Sure. So House Bill 920 was passed I believe in the 1970s, and it was really meant as sort of a break on property tax amounts either going steeply up or steeply down,
Mm-hmm.
depending on rising or falling property values. So what that bill did was it froze in place what the amount of a tax levy would collect. And so, as long as there haven't been changes like new levies, for the most part, the amount of the levy stays the same. What changes is the percentage of how much each individual taxpayer pays. So if you want to think of it as one large pie, and that's the amount of the tax bill, what happens is as people's property values go up or down, or in this case, this most recent case, pretty much most of them went up, but it's whether you went up above your taxing district's average or not. Generally speaking, if the amount was say 30% overall average increase, if you were above 30%, your tax bill was going to go up. But if you were below it, your tax bill actually probably would go down some amount. So that's it was really meant, in the 70s to keep people from seeing very steep property, tax increases when their value went up. But it also works in the reverse for the times that property values may go down.
So all of these factors kind of come together, which means that if you use the tax estimator on our website, and I highly recommend it if you really want to sort of get prepared for this tax bill coming, to do that. But it isn't going to be the exact same amount because there are so many other things that are taken into consideration before that bill is actually printed.
Yeah, that's right. We want people to look at their tax bill as it's presented once it's finally
Mm-hmm.
available toward the end of the year when they receive it physically in January. And then if folks have questions, they're more than welcome to call us. Our staff are prepared to answer those questions. We are more than happy to walk people through, why it is that their bill has changed in the way that it's changed.
Yeah, now is probably a good time before the tax bill comes because then things start to really ramp up and get busy. But and along with that tax bill, you're going to provide some information because you really wanted to give people some options about different programs that you have and things. So, can you talk about what else is going to be included in that envelope that people receive?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So we have traditionally done a tax bill insert with the first tax bill that includes new levies that have passed and the tax rates for the coming year as we have them from the state. That information is helpful, but it's also very highly technical
Mm-hmm.
and kind of hard to make sense of. So what we've chosen to do this year is to provide that new levy information, and we're putting the information about rates on our website so folks can go find that. We're going to have a place people can scan on their bill if they want to see that actual calculation piece. But then in addition to those things, we're sharing information about new programs that our office offers. So our Easy Pay prepayment program for folks who want to get out ahead of their property tax bill and divide it into small monthly installments that are easier to digest. We have a new taxpayer assistance program for folks who may be struggling, especially seniors who are middle to lower income. So that's available, and I'm happy to talk more about that.
Sure.
And just any number of different things. We've got some new coming attractions that we want to talk about too that we're featuring. We're going to be rolling out electronic tax bills in the second half. So that won't be for this billing that's coming out in January. But as you get your bills over the summer, folks will have the opportunity to sign up to get that via email or text message, which is a great convenience for folks who are used to getting their bills electronically. It's kind of easier for people to manage that way. And it's also a savings for us. So it's a savings to the taxpayer not to have to mail, those additional bills. So
Okay.
those are a number of the things that we're going to include on that insert, but we think that that's a good tool for folks to kind of understand more about what we do and what's available to them to lower their bills and make it easier to pay.
Yeah, and we're just trying to provide a lot of information about, new things or, people who haven't been able to get to the website to see some of the things that you've implemented over the last year or so. So it's just another informational piece, and this is another way for people to get information as well. You're listening to Ask Cuyahoga, and this is an opportunity for you to get your answers in real time from our Cuyahoga County Treasurer and the Administrator of the Board of Revision. So you can submit a comment on the social media platform that you're viewing this on, or on our YouTube page, or you can email communications@cuyahogacounty.gov. Before we start taking questions, I did want to move to the next step in the process if people want to contest the valuation that they received in their reappraisal this summer. And if you had filed an informal review with our appraisal department, you should have received that notification notification by now. If you haven't, please give us a call. But now we move to the formal tax complaint process, which is your realm, Ron,
Yes.
as administrator of the Board of Revision. So the window will open on January 1st, but this is a great time for people to start gathering the information that they're going to need to file that formal complaint. And can you just run us through the process and the whole mission of the Board of Revision, please?
Sure. So I'll start first with the mission. Our mission is to ensure that property values are correct. Under state law, every 3 years, each county has to revalue its real property, and there's two different methods of doing it. In the cycle, the method that we just did, the appraisal department, is called the sexennial update, and they look at all factors that go into property valuation: recent sales, conditions of neighborhoods, and what neighborhoods are property values are. They also do go and physically look at the outside of each property in the county. So that was what the appraisal department did last year. They sent the proposed new value letters over the summer for anyone that chose to submit an informal complaint to the appraisal department saying, we don't think you got my property value correct. That process is now completed. So that brings us next to the formal process. We don't call it the formal process, but it's the process that is set out in the Ohio Revised Code. So anyone who feels that their property value is incorrect can submit a complaint to our office between January 1st and March 31st. There's a number of different ways to do that. One way, for anyone that's comfortable using a computer, our online filing portal will be up on our website, the Board of Revision's website, as of January 1st. It's a step-by-step process, and it leads the person filing the complaint through each of the steps. And if anyone has any questions about that process, just encourage them to call our office. We're open Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4:30. Happy to take phone calls, happy to answer emails, happy to talk to people if they come to our office. But that's one way, our online filing portal. Another way, some people can get the complaint form from our website. We have both a fillable PDF and a static PDF, whichever someone prefers to use. Lastly, we take paper copies. So you can come to our office to get a paper copy of the complaint form, or if someone calls us or emails us, we will either email a copy back or mail a copy to someone that if they prefer that. So a couple of important points about the complaint filing process. It is a hard deadline of March 31st. It's in state law. We cannot change it. So if someone has something that comes up at the end of the day on March 31st and they come first thing in the morning on April 1st, you have to wait till next January. So it is a hard deadline. We will accept complaints electronically, either through the filing portal or by email up until 11:59 p.m. Eastern time. And if someone mails a complaint, we will accept late arriving complaints as long as it has a U.S. Postal Service postmark of March 31st or earlier. If it has a private meter like a FedEx or a Pitney Bowes or something, that does not count. It'll be late if it arrives at our office after March 31st.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're submitting a complaint, that's your opportunity to tell us what you think that the value of the complaint is or the property is. It's basically you telling us, if I was going to sell my property, this is what I think it would sell for. And so then we will review any evidence that someone submits. We schedule a hearing for each complaint. People can come to our office, or they can do the hearing over the phone or by Zoom. But we'll consider all of the evidence that the property owner submits, and then we'll make a decision about whether the appraisal department got the value correct, or if there's any type of adjustment warranted.
Yeah, you touched a little bit on the kinds of evidence that people provided for their informal reviews, and at this point, it's not just it's going to be a challenging year for everybody paying their property taxes this
Sure.
year. But it's not a question of I can't afford to pay my property taxes or I need help paying my property taxes because the function of your office is just on the valuation of that property and if it's correct because it needs to be correct for a lot of other things to happen too.
Yes, that's correct.
So you have to understand, I guess, what market value is. And we did have a question from Diane, who's watching on YouTube, and said it would be nice to know what items helped make a difference in our adjusted property values. Can either of you speak to that? Just when we're talking about the property values, because as you said, for the appraisals, they were outside of the property, but when they file the formal tax complaint, you're asking for some more evidence, pictures, maybe an appraisal, things like that.
Right. So there are differences between what the appraisal department looks at and what we, the Board of Revision, look at. Again, the appraisal department was really looking at big picture items that determine value.
The environment, right?
Correct.
Neighborhoods and things.
That's right. So neighborhood, outside look, they look at data for recent sales of comparable properties. What we take a look at are the things that the appraisal department would not have ready access to. So we could have two houses side by side that were built the same year, roughly the same look on the outside, same square footage, and one house sold for, let's say, $200,000. The appraisal department might have valued the house next door at $200,000 as well, because the house next door that looks the same sold for that. What the difference might be is the house that sold may have had updated bathrooms, updated kitchens,
New furnace.
New furnace, new roof, essentially a complete update. And the house next door to it may still have the same bathroom, the same kitchen, that was put in when it was originally constructed 50 years ago. That's the big difference. And so what the house next door, if that property owner files a complaint with our office, we say, okay, send us the photos. Show us what it looks like inside your home. If someone has had an appraisal done recently, I think that probably the refinancing has fallen off quite a bit in the last few years.
Sure.
But go back 5-6 years ago, and a lot of people had refinanced their homes, so they may have had an appraisal report for that said what the bank thought the value of the home was. So appraisal reports are important. Recent sales are important. You may even talk to a real estate agent and ask, if I was going to put my house on the market, can you give me a report for what you would list it for? Major repairs that need to be done. So new roof, new furnace. If you have a contractor estimate, for what those maintenance items are going to cost, submit anything to us that you think has an impact on what the value of your property is.
So try to, as we said, the portal for filing that complaint is opening on January 1st. The deadline will be March 31st. You've got 3 months to get a lot of, documents together. Make sure that they're in a digital form so that if you're filing digitally, if you're filing on the computer, you can just upload those documents and add them to the thing. But as you said, you take hard copies too.
Yes.
You can send it in the mail. You can drop it off in person, all those things. And then if somebody gets there, let's take it to the next step. Somebody files, January 5th. And then your office is going to be scheduling actual hearings on each of these, complaints that have been filed. For somebody who hasn't been through that process before, what's that like? Do they have to be there? Is it scary? Do they have to like defend themselves like in court? What's it like, Ron?
Can I ask a question to clarify though? So
Sure.
if I'm
Sure.
submitting evidence, am I getting my evidence back at the end of the process?
So to answer that question, no.
Right.
Everything that is submitted to our office becomes public record.
So no family
So
heirloom photos.
right, we
Yeah.
we encourage copies. We also encourage to remove any identifying information. So do not submit something that has your social security number, your date of birth. Um, you can black out the account numbers. If you're submitting accounts of some kind.
Sure, like the security code for the
Correct.
whatever.
But
But it's great to be able to do that digitally because then you don't have to worry about getting them back. But as you said, if you're submitting hard copies of things, if you're not able to submit that on a computer, do keep in mind that you don't get any of that back.
correct. So the hearing, we do understand that this can be intimidating for people that are not used to having to go to a formal hearing. It will be with either 2 or 3 hearing officers. These are all people that are professionally trained in property valuation. So they may be real estate professionals of some kind, either an appraiser or a broker or an agent. We have several of our hearing officers who are licensed attorneys. So these are people that this is what their professional training is in. Um, they try their best to not have the process be intimidating, but we really do encourage each person to attend their hearing. Their job is to gather information that then helps them to make a decision about the property value. So we have multiple different ways that people can attend a hearing. If someone wants to attend in person, you can come to our office. We're happy to have you come and meet with us and sit in the same room with the hearing officers. There are a lot of people that like that personal interaction.
Sure, because you
Um,
can ask questions and find out what the mindset is behind the decisions they're making. That's great.
Right, but we also realize that coming downtown, finding parking, paying for parking, can be a challenge. We realize that sometimes people may be out of town on vacation, visiting relatives, whatever the reason. So to make it easier on people, we do offer remote hearings. Um, we we do Zoom for anyone who wants a video conference for their hearing. But for those that don't feel comfortable or don't have access, to a computer or phone that has video on it, we can conduct the hearings by telephone. So we do try to make it as easy for people as possible. And again, that's to encourage people to participate. It really is always in someone's best interest to attend their hearing, because it gives the hearing officers that opportunity to ask questions, and then for the property owner to explain themselves. That's typically gets a better result for the property owner than it does just submitting the complaint and some pictures or other documents, and then not being there to explain what they mean.
Yeah, if you're going through the process, it's just going to benefit you to be there. And then what's the amount of time before you get a decision?
So typically on a decision, particularly residential, our standard is we try to get a decision out within 2 weeks.
Great.
Most of the time it's sooner than that after the hearing, but it can take up to 2 weeks for a decision. Sometimes we will ask someone to provide additional information that they may say at a hearing they have, so that can extend it a little bit. Um, the thing that can take much longer is scheduling the hearings. We anticipate a pretty substantial number to be filed next year. I don't have a way of knowing for sure until the filing period is over, but based on historical trends, we will probably receive somewhere in the ballpark of about 15,000 complaints, plus or minus a couple thousand. Um, and so the longer into the filing process someone files the complaint, the more likely it is that their hearing is going to get pushed farther and farther into 2025. probably even likely we will not finish all the complaints we receive next year until sometime first or even second quarter of 2026.
Okay.
So if you're someone that wants us to hear your complaint sooner, I'd recommend filing it with us as soon as you can in the filing period, because we will be scheduling them as the complaints come in.
Okay. Thank you. This is Ask Cuyahoga. We've got Cuyahoga County Treasurer Brad Cromes and the Administrator of our Board of Revision, Ron O'Leary, here to answer questions. And we're we have questions about the formal tax complaint process, but also about property tax bills, which are going to be coming out, reflecting the new valuations that are the result of this year's sexennial reappraisal. So some questions are coming in, and I'm going to try to have these in an organized fashion, but I think we're just going to hit them as they come in. So we'll see. The first one is from Mike in Shaker Heights, who says he's a first-time homeowner and he needs help understanding his tax bill, which we've talked a little bit about, some of the items to look for when you receive your tax bill. But again, I mean, when somebody receives a tax bill, what is there a reflection of, and what should they understand about it when they're making that payment?
Sure, great. Well, Mike, congratulations on being a first-time home buyer. I'm your neighbor there in Shaker Heights, so I'm glad to have you in the neighborhood. Some of the things that we like to point people to on the tax bill that are helpful. I mentioned before kind of how we do the calculation piece, so certainly look at that and sort of see how the number is arrived at. But over and above that piece, knowing what the tax distribution is, where the taxes go, is probably the number one question we receive. And Mike, if you're looking for that, it'll be on the right-hand side of the bill, about halfway down, and it kind of describes, what percentage goes to your schools, to the local government, to the county for health levies and what have you.
Libraries.
Libraries. The vast majority of most people's bills, 60% or so, go to the school districts. But if you want that detailed information, that's available there. And then on the back of the bill, actually, there's a lot of really great information. I don't know that everyone turns the bill over, but that's really helpful because you'll see listed there, the ways that you can pay in person, by phone, online, credit, debit card, dropping it off at our office, etc. So that's all listed there. We've got information about programs for seniors on the back a little bit, some information about deadlines and those sorts of things. So it's important to make sure that you're checking that too. And then the insert that I mentioned earlier in our conversation. So on that insert, you're going to see information about levies that were recently passed. There is one in Shaker Heights, and also about our various programs that we offer, Easy Pay, Taxpayer Assistance Program, those sorts of things.
Great. Larry from Garfield Heights, thank you so much for sending in your question. Larry says he's not happy with the decision of the informal review. So he went through that process, received the notification, and asks what's the likelihood that the decision will be improved if he decides to go through the formal tax complaint process with the Board of Revision.
So I can't say that because I don't know what Larry submitted to the appraisal department for the informal.
Mm-hmm.
What I would recommend is this. I mean, Larry, thanks for contacting us. I'm assuming you sent your question in over a computer or phone. So I would encourage you to go to our website and look at the types of evidence that we list on our website. We've talked about some of it already: appraisal reports, photos, comparables. But our website has quite a bit of information about the types of evidence that you can submit to us. So I would say start at a minimum with what you sent to the appraisal department. But since they didn't give the value that you were looking for, I would ask you to really take a look at the other evidence that we have listed on our website and see if there's anything additional that you might have been missing that could help with that. But saying all of this, at the end of the day, our job at the Board of Revision is to determine market value, and sometimes what the evidence that we have is that the value is actually correct from the appraisal department. When someone files a complaint with us, our job is to determine the market value, and sometimes that means it stays the same as the appraisal. Sometimes we lower it either to what the taxpayer requested, or maybe not quite as much. There are some instances where we think that the appraisal department got it wrong and got it too low. Most of the time, if we raise a value, it's because of a recent sale. That's the biggest reason we might raise a value. But take a look again at the evidence that we have listed on or the types of evidence on our website. I think that's the best place to start. If you have further questions for us, give our office a call.
And again, market value is if I was to sell my house today, what could I expect to get for it?
That's
right?
correct.
From Facebook, Richard Mack said, and what justifies a 45 to 50% increase in property valuations? And he says every 3 years we've had a cycle of property values going up. Certainly, do you foresee a correction, or what has led to the current market state?
So I'm not going to claim to be an expert on the overall housing market, but there have been a number of things that contributed, recently. One of them is that we had been in a fairly lengthy period of very low interest rates for mortgages. So I mentioned before, people were refinancing fairly frequently 5, 6, 7 years ago. With the interest rates going up, for a number of years to over 7%, I think what we saw with that is that a lot of people who might otherwise have sold their home, maybe downsizing. So, kids are gone. Somebody's an empty nester now. They want a smaller home, but they would have gone to a much higher interest rate. So we've seen a lot of people hanging on, and what that created was more demand than there was housing available.
Right.
So I think that's contributed a lot to the boom that we had. The pandemic also had that effect. So I think with interest rates starting to come down, we might see some loosening and more houses available on the market, and that could either cause the market to level off, or maybe even in some cases to see a dip. But what the appraisal department did 3 years ago with the triennial update, and what they just did with the sexennial, it's what the market is. So they didn't pick a 32% average for the county. They just observed what the market was doing.
Yeah, and I'd add to that, there's an affordability crisis across the country for housing. So this isn't unique to our community here. And a lot of the solutions to that problem are going to have to come from our federal government partners and also our state government partners. And that's particularly true with respect to the property taxation scheme in the state of Ohio. Part of the reason that we have this kind of fluctuation being reflected the way that we do every 3 to 6 years is because of the general structure of the way that we do property taxes in Ohio. So I know we had a conversation earlier this year in the summer where our legislators and our executive asked folks to contact their state legislators. We really encourage you to do that again. We're entering a new cycle in January where there's going to be some new leadership in the House and Senate in the state of Ohio. But really long-term solutions to property taxation are going to need to come from that state level. And we're doing what we can locally to respond and put some programs in place to help folks out. But in terms of real structural systemic change, that's got to come from elsewhere.
And once again, it's not just a Cuyahoga County situation. It is, the reappraisal is something that the state mandates we do, and
Right.
every county in the state did it. Brad, as long as I've got you here, Selena from Lakewood, just lost my job and I'm concerned about paying my taxes. What can I do to stay in good standing?
Thanks for the question, Selena. I'm sorry that you're experiencing that hardship. We have a couple of options that are available to help. And unfortunately, there's taxes are one of those things that are sort of inescapable in life, right? But the programs that we have that may be helpful to you, and the program that is available to everybody actually in Cuyahoga County, is what we call Easy Pay. So Easy Pay is a program where folks can divide their property tax bill into installments. They can choose to pay annually if they want, or biannually, which is what most people do anyway through their mortgage, or if they're paying with their tax bill. Or they can do monthly installments, which I really think is where the value is with Easy Pay. You can choose to do that by getting a coupon from us and mailing a physical payment in, or getting an automatic deduction from your bank account. monthly. The value is if you're doing the automatic deduction from the bank, we can share some of the proceeds of interest that's earned on those payments with our taxpayers. And we just shared recently, we did that application of interest. It was around $240,000 countywide. On an individual basis, it wasn't always a whole lot, but every little bit helps when you're in that situation. So Easy Pay is definitely something I would look into. And I don't know what your status is, Selena, with respect to age or any of those sorts of things. But I'd mentioned that we're standing up some solutions locally to try to help people who are in the direst of straits, closest to losing their homes, and particularly seniors. So we just launched a taxpayer assistance program. It was just approved by council a couple of weeks ago. It's a partnership with CHN Housing Partners, and what that program does is it makes up to $10,000 available in one-time assistance for homeowners who are residents of the county for at least 3 years, age 70 or greater, and who make $70,000 or less a year in income and have a current tax delinquency. So if you meet all of those criteria, you're eligible for this program. The value over and above just that $10,000 is also, we're pairing this up with housing counseling services. So we're going to have our friends at CHN sit down with folks and sort of say, okay, here's what your income is, here's what your expenses are, what's affordable, how do we make this make sense for you going forward, which I really think is going to be very valuable for folks. It's a 2-year pilot program. Money is available across the county based on county council district. So if you think you might be eligible, the application is going to be going live very soon. There's an interest form on our website you can fill out now, and I know CHN is in the process of starting to reach out to folks, so we're anticipating late this week, early next week, people will be able to fill out that live application and start the process.
Yeah, we have a partner administering the program, but we definitely have all the information on the website. So since Selena's still in the job market and had just lost her job, I mean, I would encourage you to call the treasurer's office too, because they can talk through some options or easy pay and things like that. Probably not eligible for the taxpayer assistance program, but Sharon from East Cleveland asked if it was too late to sign up. And as a matter of fact, you're right on time, right?
That's right. Yeah, right on time. We should have the application available, as I said, late this week, early next week. So keep your eyes on our website for that.
Okay, and Michael Bilnitzer has more questions about this. Wants to know how is the age of 70 determined as one of the qualifying factors for the tax assistance program?
Yeah, great question, Michael. Michael's another one of our community partners on some of our housing counseling services over and above what we're doing with CHN. So appreciate the question.
Great.
We arrived at that 70 figure for folks being eligible based on a legislative proposal from the County Auditors Association. And as I'd mentioned before, longer term solutions to this problem are going to have to come from Columbus. So this was one proposal. It's a pilot program that we've launched. Taxpayer Assistance Program is a 2-year pilot. So we're trying to find what the right kind of parameters are. So this is just our first attempt at that. Obviously, as the data comes in, we're going to be reviewing it on a monthly basis. I believe we're speaking to council quarterly. So if you're interested in coming to a county council meeting quarterly to have that review with council, we'll be happy to do that as well. And any one-off conversation I'm happy to have, obviously, also with anybody who wants to talk about that.
Yeah, he had also asked, there are people who are on fixed incomes but who are not yet 70. So probably not in this first, pilot phase, but potentially down the road, this is something that could be expanded to help, just not at the moment.
That's right. And we do have housing counseling services that aren't age limited is the other thing. As I
Great.
mentioned, Michael's one of our partners in the community who does some of that, but there are other entities. So if you're struggling, please call us. We try to connect people to our community partners that can assist and help getting people stabilized at least, and then on the track to longer term, stability and success.
Okay. Yeah. John from Independence wants to know if it's okay to pay your 2025 taxes now, like in this calendar year. And I'm not sure what the benefits, I assume there's some tax benefit for that, but how do you go about doing that if you haven't even received your tax bill yet?
Sure, it's a great question. So folks do that when they want to take advantage of the state and local tax deduction on their income taxes at the federal level. For most people, there's not a lot of value there because the standard deduction has been increased substantially over the past several years. So certainly this is one of those consult a tax professional if you don't know if that fits you or not conversations. Having said that, if you want to pay now, you have the capacity to do that. You should call us and we can give you an estimate of what your taxes should be. Again, the caveat there is that it's an estimate. So you're still going to want to look at your tax bill. You can pay the bulk of it in 2024 for 2025, but you may find that there's a difference, right, when the final calculations come out from the state. So just there's a big asterisk I want to make sure that we attach to that.
Sure.
Just because you pay in 24 doesn't mean you're done. But if you want to take advantage of some portion of that for federal income tax purposes, we're happy to assist with that.
Yeah, and just again, on cuyahogacounty.gov, we've got some really valuable tools on the treasurer's website, also on our fiscal officer website. The tax levy estimator is there, information about the formal complaint portal, information about exemptions, and a lot more. There are, great videos that'll help you walk through different processes and explain different programs to you. So it's we've tried to make it as helpful as possible, and you can always email and let us know if you feel like there's something there that isn't explained well enough or clearly enough. You're going to have the tax bills are going to be coming out within the next couple of weeks, but those get mailed, and there's the whole process of the Postal Service. You can actually find out your bill amount online earlier, right?
Right.
That'll be
So,
posted earlier.
yeah, as soon as we have our rates from the state of Ohio, we'll start the process of creating our tax bills, and that takes a couple of days. But as soon as they're ready, we'll post those online. And as I mentioned before, we're going to have electronic tax bill presentment. So in addition to getting a figure and the amount that's due, folks will be able to actually see what the physical copy of their tax bill will look like. And that's actually going to be true for people that we're mailing a tax bill to, as well as people who are having their taxes paid through their mortgage. So if you're interested in knowing, what your tax distribution is, you might not know necessarily if it's coming out of your mortgage payment. You can go onto our website, take a look at that, and then see that breakout on your electronic presentment.
And then the deadline, as you said, is going to be February 20th. This year, you started having some extended hours. Do you anticipate you'll be doing that again for people who want to pay in person?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So we're going to have extended hours the Saturday before our due date. That'll be 8:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then we're doing extended hours on February 20th through 6 p.m. to give folks an opportunity over the weekend or who may not be able to come in by 4:30 during our regular hours an opportunity.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier there's going to be an insert that comes with the hard copy of the bill that's going to talk about some of the programs that you have, and it'll have some links to those things. But looking forward, you're talking about having electronic billing. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because it's something that's, in the works, right?
Yeah, a couple of things, a couple of I's to dot and T's to cross still on that. But by way of coming attractions, for second half, we're going to have the ability to to receive your tax bill electronically via email or text message. So the way to sign up for that's going to be by going through our online payment portal. You'll be able to register your parcel, select paperless billing, and then you'll receive, once the bills are ready and we present them online, you'll get an email or a text saying your bill's ready. You can go find it there. So want to make sure people are looking out for that. There's some information that will be on the tax bill insert about how to do that or where to start that process.
To opt in.
Yeah, to opt in. You can opt out at any time. That's the other thing. And we're going to be developing a policy that'll be posted to walk people through how to do both of those things so that they can go in or out as they choose. Another tool that we're onboarding, and I want to make sure people are aware of, we have the Ready Notify system for emergencies, right? So whenever there's a weather emergency, like the snowstorm we had recently, folks can get a text message from the county about that. There is also a tax updates option that is now available through Ready Notify. So if you go into your Ready Notify account and check tax updates, we can send you a tax update text to say, hey, tax bills are ready. Go check that out, or reminders about when the deadline's happening, those sorts of things as they happen. So great option if that's something you're interested in.
Sure. Ready Notify is a great free notification service run through Cuyahoga County, and our emergency management team does a great job with it. But you can opt in for a lot of other information, consumer alerts, things like that. So moving forward, you got a little bit of time here to relax before everything really starts to happen. What would you like residents to know? And I know you're taking questions all the time in your office now, especially with the people who receive notifications about their informal reviews from the appraisal department. Just in terms of what kind of questions are coming in, what do you think is most helpful for residents to know right now?
So we've talked about it. The biggest thing is get the complaint in during the filing period. you can send in your evidence later. The deadline to submit evidence is we ask to have everything in no later than 2 weeks before a hearing. That gives our hearing officers time to review what you've submitted, to do some of their own research so that, again, they can arrive at the best determination of what market value is. So again, biggest thing, get the complaint in. And if you have any questions at all, please reach out to our staff. We really do want to be of as much assistance to people as we can, because we do understand that this is a process that most people don't go through very often, and it can be, intimidating, and people can have questions. So our staff in our office really want to try to make it as easy for people as we can.
And that's really helpful to know that, it's not, you don't have to just go to your hearing with only the things that you submitted initially. You can add to it later or put some things together, as long as it's in, 2 weeks before your hearing.
That's
So
right.
you can add some things if you, get an appraisal later that's more helpful, that kind of thing. Brad, what would you like residents to know in terms of the questions that are coming into your department, or what is going to be happening over the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, just a reminder that tax bills are coming soon, so please keep your eyes open for those. Be patient with us as we wait for our rates from the state, but they'll be coming out soon. And if you have any questions about your tax bill, you can call us, you can email us. Again, by way of coming attractions, we're always trying to build more ways to contact us. We might have a chat feature in the first half of next year, so things to keep your eyes open for, but we're here to help, and we want to make sure that you have that capacity, so please don't hesitate to reach out.
We're here to help. Ask Cuyahoga. If you have any questions or comments or a topic you'd like us to offer in a future live event, email us at communications@cuyahogacounty.gov. I thank our guests today, Board of Revision Administrator Ron O'Leary, Cuyahoga County Treasurer Brad Cromes. Thank you so much for your time and for your insight for residents, because there are a lot of questions. Ask Cuyahoga was produced by the Cuyahoga County Communications team. Thank you so much.